Welcome, everybody. John Irvos is here with Matt Lewis, my special guest and friend, although funny. I don't know that we've ever met in person, Matt.
Yeah, we did.
Well, the
O'Hare Airport.
Yeah, at O'Hare. Here we go. I put it on my iPad as well so I can see the TikTok side. So we're going to give it a minute for folks to arrive. I have no idea. The hour is kind of funky for folks, so hopefully my usual crew on YouTube and everywhere else is going to find out about it. Hey, Rob and Kay and boy, Rob, I hope everybody realized that we're doing this. I'm a little worried because normally we do it at 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Eastern. So I always get a little bit worried that the
Oh yeah, my apologies. I try to do everything.
Fault.
I try to compact everything into a 9 to 5 schedule.
No, but that's not a bad idea because honestly, 6 o'clock. I know you guys are. That's okay. I'm telling the TikTokers. We're going to wait a minute for folks to arrive. I think our usual, although the YouTubers, it may not even have. There we go. Now the YouTubers are arriving. I was getting a little worried there. Hey, TikTokers, because I can see the. You're at work, but we'll sneak a listen. That's okay. Now, Matt, I don't know if you can see the comments. There should be some button for you to push that you can actually see the comments, which is good. You won't see the TikTok comments, but you'll see the comments from every other, although a lot of them are TikTokers. Mm-hmm. You can tell by the little thing there. Yes, and actually, just to remind folks, afterwards, this will be on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, so you can always watch it there saved. On TikTok, it's ephemeral. But I will just introduce Matt really quick since folks are filtering in, which is good. Typically, especially with TikTok, I think there's a come and go aspect. So, that's why I may leave your bio so folks know. Anyway, guys, this is Matt Lewis. Matt and I have been longtime political friends in DC. He's a conservative. Sometimes I'm a liberal, but we get along. Matt has always been one of the sane conservatives. I know I will say this. You've always been one of the sane conservatives, which I appreciate. I mean,
Thank you. I'm just waiting until I make my heel turn, and that's when I really cash in.
Or your party makes its heel turn, right? I mean, Matt was sane when sane was cool, and now he's sane when sane is not cool among Republicans. All right, you guys. So, and the dogs are starting to fight.
Is that a Barbara Mandrell song or something?
Oh, I don't know. Country before country? Cool. Yeah.
Country wasn't cool. Yeah.
But just so folks know, so I've got his bio up on the screen, but conservative writer, blogger, has written as a contributor for the Daily Beast and others. Daily Caller, I was like, whoa, was that before they went crazy?
6 years, man, at the Daily Caller. It was.
Is that Tucker Carlson's?
Yeah, it was amazing.
But are they?
It was so fun.
I mean, are they kind of Tuckery now?
Well, yeah. So it's ironically, Tucker's not there anymore. He and I left. He and I left at the same time, basically, for different reasons. I went to the Daily Beast. He went to Fox full time.
Right.
But the Daily Caller. When I worked at the Daily Caller, it was super interesting, man. About half the staff were people like me. So you had people like John Ward, who went to Huffington Post and then Yahoo. Chris Moody, who went to CNN. Alexis Levinson, who went to BuzzFeed, Michelle Fields and Jamie Weinstein. Michelle was the one who was allegedly pushed by Corey Lewandowski.
Oh, yeah. I know I knew that name. Yeah.
Yeah. Alex Pappas.
I trust her more than Corey, let's face it.
I do too. So we had this cadre of people that were very much like me, and a lot of them went to either like National Review or mainstream media outlets. And then there were the other half who ended up going to places like Breitbart. And now I think the whole place is much more in the Breitbart mold, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But when I was there, it was really this amazing microcosm, I would say, of the conservative movement at the time.
Right. Yep. Well, let me just tell folks. So I got Matt here. Like I said, Matt's a conservative writer. I find him to be a very sane conservative, and he always was. But now more than ever, I had gone through some of Matt's stories because he's a writer for the Daily Beast and others, and went through his last 10, 12 stories, pulled even the headlines alone sort of give you the gist. Matt, I grabbed a bunch of topics. We don't have to hit all of them. I will tell folks, we'll start talking, and then I'll just sort of grab your questions as we go along. For folks on TikTok, always easiest to submit your questions in the Q&A link that's in my profile, because on the screen, it flies by too quickly. For those of you on YouTube and everywhere else, obviously use the comment box if you want to use super chat questions to help me out. and to catch our attention, that is always welcome as well. And so we'll just jump right in. I'll start this. And of course, and like I said, I'm visiting mom, so the dogs will always be coming.
I'm just impressed by this logistical feat. I have a podcast, and I cannot imagine streaming the show plus putting it on multiple platforms.
It took a while. It took a while. We finally got it. I finally got it to work. Anyway, this is a whole other aspect of actually getting things on the screen. Was its own magic, but it's okay. All right. I mean, Matt, are you hopeful? I'm not very hopeful. Are you hopeful about where we're heading as a country? I mean the democracy thing. I'm kind of worried.
Yeah. It's a great question.
I'm worried. I'm sorry. I don't mean. I'm sorry. Yeah, go on. Sorry, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that if you ask me just as an observer, if I'm optimistic, I'm not. But I don't behave that way. And part of that is that my philosophy is that you do the best you can do. And then, you have faith that you're going to be able to make it.
Right.
And so I think I live very optimistically. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm probably bullish on Matt Lewis, but it's hard to preserve that because my day job is following politics, right. and there's really not a lot of evidence to suggest that things are good.
Yeah.
So in a way, I may be of like two minds, and there's some discordance there, but thank God, I think that in my personal life, I feel happy. That to be honest with you, man.
No, I mean that's good, but it's kind of sad at the same time. Like at least personally, you're happy. Not happy for the country, but yeah.
But to be honest with you, I think this was a problem as a political observer and analyst. And by the way, I live in West Virginia now. Oh. My dad was a prison guard.
You're happy.
My dad was a prison guard for 30 years,
okay.
So I come from a rural kind of working class background.
Right.
But part of the reason that I really miss the Trump era in some ways is that my version of conservatism is not being a victim. It's about being like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and you're never a victim. You have to adapt and overcome. I'll find a way to be successful. That philosophy has served me well in life, but it meant that I missed how many pissed off, angry Americans were making themselves into victims. I was oblivious to that.
Okay. You know what? Funny, because I was going to jump in because I thought you were going to say you missed Trump because he was somebody who didn't believe in victims because he and the movement are the biggest victims of all.
I know. Yes.
They're so oppressed.
Totally. I completely agree. But that goes, I'm not that way. And I was surprised at how many people on the right are victims and relish their victim status.
What do you... This is almost too big of a question because I keep trying to figure out what the hell is happening on the right because, I mean, you probably remember, most people may not, but I was a Republican just out of law school, worked on Capitol Hill for a Republican senator for 5 years, all this kind of stuff. And when I left the Republican Party, I still retained, for example, a healthy dislike of the Soviets and the Russians, for example. Especially that alone for a Republican to not get that the Russians and especially Putin are bad news. I mean, I don't know if the rest of you can appreciate this, but seriously, like Republican, I grew up with Ronald Reagan. I mean, that stuff is.
Yeah, man, my.
You know what I mean? And they all kind of just came around like, oh, we love Putin now. And U.S. foreign policy, who cares about helping democracy abroad? No problem.
Because I don't get it. I don't get how that happened because not only did I grow up with Ronald Reagan, tear down this wall, but, if you wanted to start a propaganda media firm to turn us against Russians, you couldn't have done a better job than Hollywood did. I mean, if you saw movies like Rambo First Blood Part 2 or Red Dawn or any Stallone movie.
Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Yeah, I mean, basically, my whole life was being fed Rocky IV, whatever. I mean, there were so many pop culture movies.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we should base our political worldviews
the Wendy's
around
commercial.
Right. But look, I'm not saying that's a great thing, that's how I largely based a lot of my beliefs. But I am surprised that those things were not instilled more deep seated. There were a lot of people my age and older, including Donald Trump, who apparently didn't mind the Soviets much. And again,
yes.
I mean, look, I know the Soviet Union's not there, but there's a KGB agent running the country. So.
Yeah. That's what I tell people. I mean, Glenn Greenwald was the one who I always tell people, Glenn made this comment. Of course, Glenn going after Malcolm Nance once. Malcolm, the KGB hasn't existed for 30 years or what. And Malcolm turns and he goes, Glenn, they changed the name. Do you really think like they just got rid of it? Because they changed the name. No, but it's that larger issue of, I feel like, okay, sure. Democrats will tell you, or liberals will tell you, that they didn't think Republicans ever believed in anything Republicans said. I don't think that's true. I think Republicans, the deficit, let's face it, on the deficit, there's a fast and loose thing. Whoever's in power doesn't care, and then we're out of power, you do. So that, to some degree, but on the freedom thing, on the nationalism thing, Trump isn't a Republican and he's not a conservative. I just, honestly, COVID too. I mean, on all of this stuff, there is a cult-like aspect, and I don't understand what is going on with your party, or what used to be your party, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still a registered Republican. In fact, it's funny because I lived in Virginia for 15 years, a state that doesn't have party registration. But I was a conservative then, and I moved to West Virginia a couple years ago, and I actually registered as a Republican in the Trump era. But obviously I have major, like, I didn't vote for Trump in 2016. I didn't vote for Trump in 2020.
Right.
I didn't vote for Hillary or Biden either. I did vote for Biden in the primary to beat Bernie Sanders. So I have a very weird, if someone's looking at my voting record, they're probably very confused about who I am. But look, I think that there is a cult phenomenon, obviously, with Donald Trump. I can't argue with you there, but I think there's something else too. I think that I was not aware of this, but there was a deep-seated right-wing thing happening in the Republican base that is not conservative. And I think a lot of them didn't buy it. When I was a kid and I would hear Reagan talk about a shining city on a hill and you and I have a rendezvous with destiny. I mean, Ronald Reagan grew up a fan of FDR, and he lived in Hollywood. And he was optimistic. And so I think that I thought everyone bought into Reaganism because God knows we talked about Reagan for decades. Yeah. I don't think they did. I think that
you think the tent was too big, maybe? I mean,
I think they went along. I mean, some of us did, but I think a lot of the base went along with Reagan's happy talk.
Okay.
But they were never really sold on his cheery philosophy.
Okay, but that doesn't explain. I agree with you, actually, but that doesn't explain the intelligentsia. Okay, I hate the word establishment because honestly, it reminds me of the 60s. I'm like, we're going to throw flowers at each other. The establishment Democrats, the establishment Republicans. It's used as a slur, but let's say, the Republican Party, the Republican Party headquarters, Republican leaders in Congress, members of Congress, they're not the base. They're not people who are Republicans because, we got dragged along in the big tent. They are the tent. And
they're scared. I mean, they're scared of Trump and his voters and their voters. I mean, so you're right. They are, I think a lot of them are probably more like me philosophically, except they're cowards or ambitious. And so
they are a little cowardice. My aunt in Greece, 93-year-old aunt in Greece, and I'll tell folks because I never tell people why she said this. What we're talking socialist, of course, because this is Greece. So on the left, you're a socialist, and she was very big in the women's movement. My uncle, her husband, was the Greek defense minister and lots of other important jobs. So I mean, they were very connected people, and she did not like Hillary Clinton. And and I was like, come on. She said, I met her at the women's thing in Beijing. So was this like 1996 or whatever? The women's, the International Women's, I'm forgetting what it's called now.
I don't remember. Yeah.
It was the big women's summit, huge deal. She goes, I met her and I said to her, how could you stay with that man? And I went, you did not. She goes, I did. She said, and I said, your self-respect is worth more than a job. And I was like, whoop, meaning because look, I was defending Hillary saying you have aspirations to office. Your husband kind of screwed you. You helped him get where he is. You might as well stay around until you get where you want to be. rather than just ditching him right now. And that
Mhm.
person said, your self-respect is worth more than a job. There's only 10 of these guys in Congress, Republicans, who put their self-respect before the job, and most of them are losing their jobs. But only
Yeah.
10?
It's surprising to me. I mean, there's so many things that have surprised me in the last 6 or 7 years, and that's one of them. I would have thought that a lot more Republican members would have been willing to say, like, "F you, this is ridiculous. I'm
Yeah.
out of here."
Yeah.
And it is so interesting, right? What makes someone want to run for office and be resilient and survive the slings and arrows? And you would think that like leadership capabilities and might have more to do with it, but I actually think a lot of it is kind of going along to get along and doing whatever it takes
It's a
to get
job.
ahead.
It's a job.
They will kiss someone's ass to get
Yeah.
ahead and to stay
Yeah.
elected. They will. So maybe there is a psychology there. What kind of person's willing to call someone up and ask them for money? I mean, just like normal
There's a
people
point. You're right.
would want to do that.
Yeah,
So
and you know what? And well, I guess the ego of getting elected, I always thought the ego of getting elected was the same reason I'm in politics or you're in politics, where I suspect yours is similar. Our ego is we think we can make a difference. We think our voice can impact people in the country or the world or wherever. That's an ego, but it's an ego devoted to action. And with these guys, I feel like it's an ego devoted to, I've got my book, I've got my money, I've got this, I've got my car. I don't want to lose it. And if I speak out the truth, I'm going to lose it. Whereas we speak the truth, even though it may affect us financially in our job.
I do think some of
your
them,
job.
I think that's totally true, but I also do think some of them, whether this is real or not, I'm not sure, but I think that they tell themselves, they rationalize that they want to do something really big,
right?
And they have to pay a humiliating price to do it.
Right.
And so now look, and that may be, they always say like there's a real reason and then there's a good reason. The real reason may be they want to be important, they want to be famous, they want to be rich,
and they rationalize it.
Yeah.
And well, with Trump, we did get the Supreme Court nominations. I mean, they're valid arguments, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it still is a rationalization at the same time. Now,
and you can also make the rationalization that I was there to stop Trump from going too far,
which
you want me on that wall.
None of them did. Yeah. Now, Rob is asking, of the conservative wing in politics of America, what percentage do both of you, I'll ask you, do you believe are traditional conservatives versus MAGA now in Republican politics or conservative politics, whatever you want to call it? Although he's saying the conservative wing, I guess I would say both conservative wing, maybe, and Republican Party.
I mean, are we talking about elected officials? Are we talking about the grassroots?
I think he's talking. My guess is he'd be saying Republicans overall across the country.
Yeah. So let's go with that. I would say it's too simplistic to break it into two categories or classifications.
Okay.
I mean, I think you probably need 3 or 4 or 5, right? I mean, there's probably 20% of them that are QAnon conspiracy theorists. And then there's probably another maybe 10 or 20% who just love Donald Trump specifically. Like they might not even stay with Ron DeSantis. They are Trump folks. And so I think that it's more complicated than just a binary choice. But I think at the end of the day, the sad thing is there's probably less than 30% of us who are what we would call like Reagan Republicans or traditional mainstream movement conservatives.
Right.
Yeah. And maybe 25% if we're lucky on a good day.
Right. And a lot of those might have still voted for Trump again in 2020. Liz Cheney voted for Trump in 2020. I think Kinzinger did too. No, excuse me. Didn't she and Kinzinger both? I don't remember.
I think they both voted for Trump, and then he lost them on like January 6th.
The insurrection, yeah.
But which in one sense, in one way that obviously makes sense, but on the other way, it's like think about all the crazy things Trump did that they bit their tongue and were totally okay with.
No,
and that's a weird thing for me, dude. I have to say, like, as I'll put on my like ambitious careerist hat here. The best if you want to get a job in the mainstream media taking on Trump, the worst thing to be is someone who has consistently been against Trump for 5 or 6 or 7 years. That's not good. Right. It's easier if you worked for Trump, and then turned against him. You're a much more marketable commodity.
White House, Alyssa Farrow, whatever her name is. The White House.
That's a prime example. She is somebody who was defending Trump I'm pretty sure I'd have to go back and check, but I think even after January 6th,
Yeah.
she was, and again, don't quote me on that, but I believe that's true. But certainly late in the game, and then found Jesus at some point.
Well,
And
I mean, the irony is people will often, I find people on the left will often criticize people like that. Again, Liz Cheney. My
Yeah.
favorite was people were bitching the other day about Liz Cheney. She's bad on abortion. I'm like, of course she's bad on abortion. She's freaking Liz Cheney. But they don't understand that's what makes Liz Cheney such an effective weapon. I mean, in a party that doesn't care anymore if you're a conservative Republican, but nonetheless, being a conservative Republican makes her more effective with the middle than being AOC or Bernie. I mean,
totally. And the other thing
Bernie
is
to be a lefty. They don't expect Liz Cheney on democracy.
Totally right. I mean, I'm pro-life, for example, and I get beat on the Daily
We're going to get to that.
I have people who have whiplash trying to follow my career because it's like, I thought you were cool. I thought you were one of us. And then you wrote this piece and they don't know what to think of me, but I'm consistent. I haven't changed at all. Just because I attack Trump doesn't mean I'm a progressive. But back to your point about Alyssa Farah and Liz Cheney. On one hand, I think we could look and be like, you were okay with the Muslim ban? That was totally cool, But on the other hand, we need to be welcoming converts. I mean, if we have this litmus test that, like, if you weren't by January 5th, 2020, if you weren't on our bandwagon, you're not welcome. Then we're not going to get any more converts. People are going to, are going to circle a wagon. So
if we're going to, this was something I forgot who it said several years ago, but if we're going to criticize Republicans, for example, for crossing the line and either becoming Democrats or supporting us on some issues, then why should they cross the line? Let's stop asking them to do the right thing. If when they do the right thing, we say, well, you're evil anyway, and we're not going to praise you. I'm like, guys, also my favorite is then they lecture me. You think Liz Cheney's not good? You think she's good? You think she's good? She's not. And all of a sudden, it's as if, like, I'm kind of like, if you think I didn't know, I mean, literally, Liz Cheney is to the right of Attila the Hun. Her whole family is. I mean, other than Mary, who knows?
That's what makes it so bizarre is that Dick Cheney's daughter is like, this is Darth Vader.
But it's great. Come on. It's great. Yeah, no. So let me tell folks. So feel free to start writing comments on TikTok. I can see them, although better in the Q&A function on TikTok. In the rest of you, it's much easier to follow in the chat. So feel free to start writing more questions there. I'll just highlight them from Matt as I like them. And we're going to just keep talking. Let me actually, Matt, I'll pull up the TikTok Q&A just in case anybody wrote a question there. And otherwise, we'll jump back into the topics because there's lots of topics, obviously, to get into on all of this. Hang on.
So I see Ashley says, but Liz Cheney has grown and changed on other views. That's actually a valid point. There are some things that she has changed on, even though I still think that Liz Cheney voted with Trump like 95% of the time or something. Right. And I think if you went down the list of what qualified you to be a conservative 10 years ago, where are you on tax cuts? Where are you on this? I think Liz Cheney would still be considered very conservative, even though
I think so.
I'm confident, even though I think that Ashley is right, that Liz has changed on some things.
Yep. So let me pull up the topic list again. Hang on here. I mean, there's everything. Let's talk about the fall election.
Okay.
Because also that encompasses Biden's.
Great, because I prepared to give a talk about the election yesterday.
Okay. And let me just prepare 1 second. You've got semi-fascist. You've got is it the red wave going to be the red wave in both houses? You've got Roe v. Wade. So we've got a lot of different issues now.
We got a lot to work with.
Oh, and then Lindsey Graham's abortion legislation, which maybe it's brilliant, maybe it's stupid in terms of getting out the vote.
Well, I think the thing is that what Lindsey Graham, I think, is trying to do.
Tell people what he's doing, what the bill is.
So he's proposing a national law which would ban abortion after 15 weeks. And I think that's actually a mainstream position. That is
but
something.
It would let red states ban it completely if they wanted to. So it would make blue states cut abortions ban all abortions after 15 weeks, but red states could ban them all entirely if they want to.
Yeah, see, I think the mistake is that this should have been a compromise. Lindsey, and so obviously the reason, the incentive for doing this, if you're a pro-lifer, the incentive for doing this is like, hey, some of these states are having no exceptions at all. We're going to get killed electorally. There's going to be a huge backlash. We've got some of these states, you know, they're not going to have exceptions for rape or incest or anything like that. So let's come to a compromise. 15 weeks is a mainstream majority popular position. I think it's what they have in Europe.
But in the US, I think in France they may have that, but in America that may not be exactly considered a compromise. You know?
Well, I think if you were to poll 15 weeks, I think it would be popular. In fact, I think it is popular. I'm willing to be overruled on that, but I'm pretty sure it is. But the problem is, I think Lindsey Graham, for this to work, it would have had to have been bipartisan, and it would have had to been, for blue states who want to have like partial birth abortion, it's going to be 15 weeks. And for red states who want to ban anything, who want to ban sex to begin with, it's going to be 15 weeks. And so I think that the problem was that this should not have been a Lindsey Graham proposal. This should have been a bipartisan proposal. And I think it would have been a popular with the American public. Now, the interest groups would hate it on the right and the left, but I think the mainstream American public would agree.
Well, the thing, and I get, let me ask you analysis wise. So is Graham's proposal going to help get out the Republican base more than it just pisses women off even more? And potentially, I've been impressed by some of the Republican men I've seen interviewed in like, BF America, I mean, the middle of nowhere. I'm from the Midwest, and I still consider them in the middle of nowhere where they were from. And this one guy was like, this older, like in his 60s, he goes, I'm a Republican, but what they're doing on this abortion thing, they need to be more liberal. He even used the word liberal. And I was like, ooh.
Yeah. Well, and part of it is people could sort of ignore the issue or get away with, really being very pro-life under the assumption that they would never have to confront the issue, right? Under the assumption that like Wade, it's never going to be overturned. So there's no price to be paid for
correct. They were the dogs chasing the car that caught the car, or whatever the expression is. Yeah.
But I think Lindsey Graham, ultimately, I think this is ham-fisted. I think this is going to hurt Republicans. I mean, first of all,
think it'll hurt them more than help them. I
think it hurts more than it helps. I think it's a net negative for Republicans. I mean, first of all, it reminds everybody about this issue, which, I mean, I'm not suggesting it had receded really, but it brings it up again. Part of an election is fighting over what is the big topic, right? Is the big topic going to be inflation?
Right.
And the economy, or is the big topic going to be
Donald Trump and abortion?
So Lindsey Graham did that. And then I think that if this had been a bipartisan 15-week proposal, I think maybe it might have worked, but the way that he brought it out,
you'd never get a bipartisan 15-week. There's no way. I mean, on the approach, I'm not such an expert on choice issues, but 15 weeks, there's no way in hell. I know that.
Well, probably, it probably wouldn't have happened. Yeah. But I think that it might have helped, at least on the margins, because you would have had a Republican staking out, I think, again, a mainstream kind of moderate from our standpoint position. As it stands, all that happens is, we're reminded of Lindsey Graham's rhetoric. He went around saying the states are the laboratories of democracy, and we need to send it back to the states and let the local government decide. And now he's completely contradicting that, right?
He's a liar. He tried to be the McCain. What was it? Steve, what's his face? Steve, former McCain guy.
Schmidt?
Steve Schmidt. Steve must have been the one who did it. He, knowing it was either him or Rick Wilson. And Rick, we're going to have in a couple of weeks on the show, because Rick I love.
Get to the bottom of it. Yeah.
Steve had said something about Lindsey Graham where he compared him. It had to be Steve when I tell you this. Compared him to some fish that leeches onto the bigger fish to suck off of them and eat all the plankton off of their bodies, and then just, when that's done, goes to the next big fish. And that's what he compared him to. He says, first he leached onto John McCain because John McCain had the fame. Graham was not at all a maverick. He lied his way through, and Trump was the next big fish. And Graham all of a sudden, changed.
He's like a remora. I don't think it's just the fame, though. I think it's almost like daddy issues in a weird way. I think that McCain didn't just have the fame.
I'm controlling myself, but you can have fun with this.
McCain didn't just have the fame. He had the charisma and the gravitas. And then it went to Trump, and Trump is daddy. So I think there's some deep-seated stuff involved in this, but whatever the case may be.
Way, he's another one who lies. I actually
Lindsey
thought, I
Graham
will say this,
locks
I actually,
into the alpha,
Lindsey
whoever the
Graham,
alpha is. Yeah.
he fakes it well too, though. This is the thing that has confused me with Republicans so much is I believed so much of their BS all these years. And frankly, maybe they meant it all these years, but it scares me because for me, this has also been just a whole concern about fascism overall. It's funny, now we can use the word fascism. Before it was used by the left like you were a fascist. You know, everybody was a fascist who
Yeah.
disagreed, right? I mean, I don't say the left overall, but meaning like, you know,
It
the
was
far left would,
bandied about by
the far
like
left would call
hippies
everybody
and
fascist,
stuff.
right?
Yeah.
Whereas now the word is, you know, is more relevant. But I and we had a friend of mine, Thomas Zimmer, who's a professor at Georgetown history, very interesting, and history of division and all these extremism, et cetera. But it still kind of blows my mind how I thought as Americans, I sort of bought into the whole, and I'm going to offend, I'm going to try to say this carefully because I don't want to piss off our European audience because we have a lot of Europeans who watch us too here. But I think as Americans, we kind of buy into the whole thing where, you know, you guys had world wars. We kind of opted in by choice. The war was on your soil. We kind of felt like we didn't have those kind of not only divisions that you have, but also the that possible yearning for fascism thing that some people in Europe have, right? You had Greece, you had Spain. Those were relatively recent. In America, I mean, you know, Thomas would say it was fascism before the 1960s or whatever, possibly, right? But in the South or wherever, and maybe he's right, but this exposed to me so many Americans, certainly on the right, but
Yeah.
maybe whatever these other people are, that all of a sudden, Tucker Carlson, Fox News, all of these guys, they're willing to accept what authoritarianism, whatever polite word you want to use, that as an American, I thought we would never accept.
It's so
And
weird,
it
right?
scares
And
me.
I think some of it is like dodging a bullet. Like we got lucky. Like if Huey Long had lived, I think it's entirely possible that Huey Long could have been a dictator. But he didn't.
Right.
And then we had, you
Okay,
know, the George.
tell people who Huey Long is.
So Huey Long was like a governor and senator from Louisiana, and he was very, very popular. He had this slogan, "Every man a king." He he was kind of populist, incredibly popular. He was called the Kingfish. That was his other nickname, and he was just very populist and demagogic. And he very well could have tried to. He was going to try to sabotage. I just interviewed David Petrusha, who has a new book out right now called "Roosevelt Sweeps Nation." And in the book, he talks about how Huey Long was going to try to sabotage FDR's reelection in 1936. Swing it back to the Republicans, and then he was going to win the next time around. And Huey Long, if you study the guy, it's super scary, man. But we also had people like George Wallace,
right,
who did a lot better than you might think. We had people like, I mean, personally, I think Pat Buchanan's a hell of a nice guy personally.
I've heard that.
Like,
yeah,
he's a really nice guy. But I kept thinking like America had this thing that would reject this kind of nationalism and populism. Like we would just we rejected Buchananism, you know, and that's part of the reason I was stunned that Trump pulled this off is because I had this belief as America has this exceptional nation that wasn't susceptible to this stuff, and that the body would like reject, you know, reject the organ donation, and this time it took.
Well, even the whole thing about, you know, people, I think it's more people on the right who put it this way, but they always say, you know, we're a center right nation or whatever. People on the left might say more center or maybe even center left, but nobody says, oh, sure, Americans, give them the right guy and they'll go for fat. You know, we're Hungary, we're Brazil. If you give us the right dictator, I never thought
part
that
of it too is that places that have been taken over by authoritarians, oftentimes it's been a minority of voters who did it as well.
That's the other thing, right?
And and so you don't have to have 100% of the population being like bring on an authoritarian for them to sneak their way into power.
And you cheat.
And then they start buying off people and scaring people and intimidating people and twisting arms and changing the rules. Changing the rules. So that's where it gets scary.
All the candidates, I mean, one of the articles you wrote was talking about sort of, you know, Republicans seem to now excel at having idiots run. But the problem is a lot of those idiots who are running are this MAGA steal the election crowd. again, it's and actually, and that stuff scares me a little because that stuff gets more wiggly. I think like it's one thing to say, well, when it gets to the Congress, just don't certify Joe Biden, right? I mean, where it's an open steal. But when you're dealing with, for example, a county in Arizona, pick a state, I don't care, and the local Republicans in the county say, we're not going to certify. We think there was too much fraud. And now that county, that was a Biden county, hasn't certified, and now those votes aren't there. Now what happens? Does that state that went for Biden not certify, and all of a sudden the electoral votes go down? And I mean,
and that's where I think
grayer.
None of us really fully appreciated what a miracle America is or was, and that liberal democracy, and that people. I was just watching. I love the Andy Griffith show. This morning. I'm watching. I'm watching it with my kids, and Andy is scolding Opie about the importance of being. He lost a race. And about the importance of being a good loser, and those values were instilled, and there were a lot of people. We see even in 2016, we saw a lot of Republicans who voted for Donald Trump. People, especially in Georgia, it happened, where like the Secretary of State or the elections officials went against Donald Trump. They did the right thing.
Yes, this time, right?
What's that?
This time, but correct.
This time, that's the problem. That's my concern is they didn't have to. They could. What if they had been intimidated, or what if they end up getting replaced?
Where's this? I'm trying to look for. I hate this when you retweet something. I tweeted something this morning. Come on, guys. Oh, here it is. Shoot. Oh, this is the clip. Hold on. I'm going to, if I can download this real quick. I mean, another magic of, but this is the problem when you're doing stuff live. But Matt's you were also weren't you doing Blogging Heads forever with Bill Scheer or whoever, or not? Wasn't that you? Oh, did Matt freeze or did I freeze? Okay, hoping I didn't freeze. Folks, let me know in the comments. Did I freeze or was that Matt? Somebody let me know in the comments. I'm hoping it was Matt and not me. It's Matt. Okay, I mean, not that I'm happy Matt froze, but at least it wasn't me. Anyway, I'm going to... Oh, Matt, now you're blinking. You're there. Can you hear me? Matt?
Hello?
Can you hear me now? Matt? All right, Matt will hopefully exit and come back in, I'm hoping. I don't think he can't. I don't think he probably doesn't see us anymore. Matt? You know what? I'm going to remove Matt. All right, there. Oh, that doesn't actually... Okay, here. All right, I kicked Matt from the studio. 1 second, guys. And what I'm hoping is that will force him to log back in. I'm hoping it doesn't actually kick him out. Hold on. There's a wonderful video, and actually all the better because I'm gonna show you. I wanted Matt to see it because it's such a great video, but it's all of the concession speeches over the years. And of course, the one that's missing is Trump, but it's really kind of amazing to see. All right, we're going to wait for Matt here. Oh, Matt's coming in now, I think. All right, there we go. And I'm going to... Matt, there you are. Can you hear me now?
Sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
Your side froze. People let me know. I thought it was me, and they were like, nope, it's Matt. But I just ended up kicking you out because I kicked you out because I figured you would know to log back in, and that's what that worked. So
I'm a trained broadcast professional.
Well, no,
some of these people.
It's true.
Yeah, it matters.
Couldn't you see, like you said, couldn't you see somebody like sitting there the whole time, like for the next half hour? You're going, no, log back in. All right, I'm going to show something. Hang on. All right, the magic here. One of the neat things you can do with this program too is you can show videos. This I literally saw just this morning. I don't know who did it.
Last night, I congratulated Donald Trump and offered to work with him on behalf of our country.
I have just called President Obama to congratulate him on his victory.
I had the honor of calling Senator Barack Obama to congratulate him. Please.
I spoke to President Bush and I offered him and Laura our congratulations on their victory.
Now the U.S. Supreme Court has spoken. While I strongly disagree with the court's decision, I accept it
The president is my opponent, not my enemy, and I wish him well, and I pledge my support.
And America must always come first, so we will get behind this new president and wish him well.
This nation faces major challenges ahead, and we must work together.
He is one. We are all Americans. He is our president.
In bringing about an orderly transition of government in the weeks ahead.
I congratulate you on your victory.
Congratulations on your victory.
We've got a president-elect. He's going to have my help. Cheers.
I have no bitterness, no rancor at all.
He will have my wholehearted support and yours.
The people have rendered their verdict, and I gladly accept it.
I urge all Americans
Tell people who some of these guys are.
and every good American will wholeheartedly accept the will of the people.
I accept the result of the election with complete goodwill.
This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
I don't know who did that because they didn't put their like name on it or whatever. So who knows? But oh, you there, Matt? Can you hear me or no?
Hey, I'm sort of here.
Okay,
I
hear
can hear you a little bit. Yeah, no, just
me?
watching that video was. I can now. That video was, there's nothing like a video, right? I mean, I knew that what Trump did was unprecedented, but then over time we forget that and we become inured to it. And then seeing that again really reminds you again of how blessed, and in a way, it's also amazing that no one did this before Trump. Like part of it is I'm disgusted that Trump broke the tradition, and then part of it is like, wow, it's what a blessing that we made it a couple hundred years without that happening.
Was that Mrs. Ford? Right? Was that?
I don't know.
Oh, I think that was Betty Ford who was congratulating Carter. And I'm like, even which that doesn't happen now. The wife doesn't congratulate, or the spouse doesn't get up and congratulate. But even that, it just, anyway, it just, what we were talking about reminded me of that. Now, are you hearing me okay? Or are you?
I am. I may have to go yell at my son, who's probably playing video games and sucking up lots of.
You know what? Why don't you do that really quick? Because even your picture is degraded. Your internet has, and I can tell when I'm asking you questions, there's a lag now. Do you want to yell at him real quick?
Give me a minute. I'm going to go.
Okay.
Let me go see what I can do.
Okay. That's funny. When I had my podcast, we had the same problem. My podcast co-host, Cliff Schechter, he would have to go yell at his son. Well, either it was for the internet, or my favorite was all the time his son would start playing the drums right as we were doing the podcast. So it was literally, because this was during COVID, right? So literally we'd be doing the, interviewing somebody or whatever, and it would be like boom, 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 boom. And it was like a COVID joke, Anyway, it was very funny. But yeah, we're going to continue in a minute. Matt is going to tell his son to get off the internet. All right, let's see how that goes.
See if that worked.
Or we're having a West Virginia problem. But yeah, no, your internet has slowed. So hopefully we'll see what happens. Let me go and jump again to the TikTok questions and see if anybody has submitted questions. Otherwise, guys, submit more. Okay, Matt is unfrozen again for me. I'm assuming it's the same for you guys, right? Matt is fine. Just let me know. I'm going to pull up my TikTok questions. Only because somebody said you froze, but I think they meant a bit ago. That's a tough. I'm not sure what they mean by this, though. How does election reform play for each party? I'm not sure what they mean, though. Are you hearing me, or it's delayed?
Well, it does seem like it seems like there's bipartisan interest in this Electoral Reform Act, and I hope they pass that. But man, they should have been on top. That should have been a top priority. Why? I know they're still waiting. Maybe lame duck it gets done. I don't know.
And again, it depends what the incentive is. I mean, Trump. Come on, Trump has told the Republicans not to pass the damn thing. Now, there may be Democratic concerns too, who knows? But Trump absolutely positively told them, you better not do something that fixes the Electoral College count. Are you kidding? You know, or limits the vice president.
Well,
now,
no,
ironically, yeah, go on.
Yeah. Well, no, I was just going to say, to be clear, this would not change the. I know you don't think this, but for anyone watching, this wouldn't change it to the popular vote versus the electoral college vote, but it would clarify the way that the count takes place. You know, like right now, it only takes like one member of Congress to object to certification. That triggers hours of debate potentially. Then it's unclear, apparently, whether the vice president can just decide to not certify the election. And so this would clarify that.
Right. Well, and like we said, then you get into the issue of, you know, states not certifying, or, which I'd never considered until somebody wrote about this a couple of months ago, a local Republican Party in some county. And God knows it ain't too hard to find one crazy person in a county somewhere who refuses to send their vote in. And all of a sudden the state doesn't have a final count. And, you know, I mean, it's, yeah. Now, Richie had a question, if you can see it at the bottom of the screen. How might social media affect anti-democracy movements? How would social media have affected Germany in the 1930s? You're an internet expert as well.
Well, I used to be a tech utopian, and now I'm a tech dystopian.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I think that I think it's a net negative. There's certainly positive things that come from it, but overall, I mean, just look at, are we better off today than we were before Twitter? Is our politics better? Look, I don't want to confuse causation and correlation, but I think it has contributed to the problem.
No, I agree. It's funny, actually. Kara Swisher, I don't follow her too much, but she's kind of weighted on this stuff too. I think she's, ironically, since she's such an expert on, you know, the internet and all of that. But, the internet has empowered a lot of people. I think the internet's empowered too many people. As an activist myself, or maybe erstwhile activist, depending on the day. You know, it put activism in the hand of everybody. The problem is activism took some skill. You had to decide what issues to jump on, what issues not to jump on. Not everybody's voice was equal. Everybody's voice is equal at the poll. It shouldn't necessarily be equal in trying to convince the masses because, you know, let me put it this way. I don't think sunshine isn't always a disinfectant, which is sort of an adage in the law, the idea of, you know, or maybe not just the law, the idea that, you know, let's just have more speech because more speech is the best and the good speech will rise to the top.
Yeah.
We've found in the internet age, that's not really true.
I completely agree. And I think it sounds so great to say more speech is, you know, but it's so trite. I mean, it's a cliche, but it's not really true. And there used to be gatekeepers. And yes, the gatekeepers kept out some good people that should have been allowed in, but they also kept out a lot of bad people. And the gatekeepers weren't perfect, but ostensibly you would have some sort of experience or expertise to become a gatekeeper. And, you know, look, the founders feared direct democracy. They were fans of representative democracy, but they feared direct democracy. And really, that's what we're having on Twitter is everyone has an equal voice.
Yeah. And we were getting, I mean, I would say we were getting there towards direct democracy in the sense that having worked on Capitol Hill, it was amazing. I mean, I was a lawyer working on arms control and transportation, lots of issues, but half my freaking job was dealing with constituents having problems back home with the federal government. So it was, and I once, I was in Russia, in the Russian Far East, in Kamchatka, back in 1993, an Alaskan delegation, because unlike Sarah Palin, I could list lots of things that Alaska does with Russia. So I'm there and I'm talking to some regional, like maybe the deputy governor, somebody pretty high up in the region, and, you know, as an American official working in the US Senate. And he wanted to know like what I did. And I was explaining the legislative side of working for a senator, but also the constituent side. And, you know, people would have problems with the Federal Aviation Administration that deals with airplanes because Alaska is a state that very much relies on air transportation, things like this. And he goes, so they pay you. And I said, well, of course they pay me. I get a salary. No. I mean, the constituents, they pay you. I'm like, no, they don't pay me. This guy, we went on for 5 minutes. And finally, my friend Marion, who's translating, Marion, who you guys know from the chat, Marion H., my good friend, Marion's there, super fluent in Russian. Marion goes, he doesn't believe you. He thinks you get bribes. And now he thinks you're lying. and couldn't even accept the concept. But I will say we have incredible representative democracy in the sense of you call your local official, and if you know how to push the buttons right, you get stuff, they can help you. But we went from that to every idiot with a mouse is it's a cacophony. And frankly, you've got experts, you've got experts who know how to game the system now. And it's people like Trump, but also a minority of crazies.
We saw that sort of fetishization of democracy on January 6th. You know, if you listen to what the people who stormed the Capitol were saying, it's like, that's our house. This is the people's house.
Yeah.
Well,
I pay for your job, right? I pay your salary.
There's a lot of that.
I mean, which you do pay the salary. People would pull that crap calling me on the phone too. I pay your salary. And I'm like, yeah. Hold on, Rob.
You know what? It never works. It never works when I'm trying to talk myself out of getting a speeding ticket. So
yeah, I pay your salary, officer. Does Matt believe that election deniers are just using the 2022 midterms to set up a massive denial in the 2024 national and/or state elections if MAGA loses? I don't know if you're using the 2022 midterms, but
no, but I do think that the rhetoric is partly about Donald Trump's ego of trying to pretend he won in 2020.
Right.
And I think there's another part of it that is laying the groundwork for future attempts to steal. But the question is, who's in place? How close is the election? If the election isn't that close, but if it comes down to a couple states and it's very close, it's a lot easier to steal. And I do think that by laying the predicate that we can't trust the experts, we can't trust the media, we can't trust the people counting ballots.
That's my favorite too.
That
Not trusting experts always cracks me up. I mean, people. Somebody pulled it. Who did they pull it on the other day? Where, oh God, I don't know if they pulled it on me or somebody else, but it was part of the. It's always the, oh, what do you know about this? And then you say what you know about it. Oh, so you're in Washington. I'm like, well, we're talking about Washington politics. So yes, well, that doesn't, you're biased. Somebody said to me or somebody else, you're biased. I'm like, oh no, it was a doctor. Oh, no, it's one of the doctors I follow on Twitter and epidemiologist. And I remember the guy now, and he's arguing with somebody about COVID. And the person says, what do you know? And he says, well, are you a viral expert? He goes, well, actually I am. I'm an epidemiologist. Well, that just makes you biased. And it was like,
yeah,
wait, what?
Yeah.
He's a virus doctor.
Thing.
And that makes him
Everyone talks about these elites, but it's like, if you're going into for a heart, if you've got medical issues, you want an elite surgeon, right? If we need to strike a Abbottabad, you want elite, special forces to go in. Like if you're playing the Packers Sunday, you would like to have an elite quarterback on your team. And it's just funny that in politics that has become, a dirty word.
Well, that's also sort of the anti-Washington thing, which always kind of got on my nerves because it's funny. Now I can appreciate the Washington thing to a degree because I will say this, what we're seeing from the leadership of the Republican Party in terms of the MAGA thing is sort of a bit of a Washington problem, meaning it's not just Washington, but it is the people in politics who only care about themselves and not so it's that message is actually true now. But the overall thing of, oh, people in Washington don't understand what's going on. I don't know. I will say this. I went to Wisconsin last weekend, I think. Yeah, last week, a week ago, week and a half, to go tour around some Frank Lloyd Wright stuff and everything. And it was kind of wild because like you're in Milwaukee. I'm in Chicago. You're in Milwaukee. And, Milwaukee's just kind of a smaller, very quaint Chicago. And then you get 10 minutes into the suburbs and it's all like, biker red. It was, as my nephew said to me here, he goes, oh, you'd have to get like an hour outside of Chicago to run into that in Illinois. But it was interesting because me and my friend, both gay, but not a couple, but they don't know. And one other yuppie straight couple and bikers at this hotel. And it was kind of a wild, and the best part was Soledad O'Brien's show was on the TV on Sunday, which I thought was funny too, because it was like they're beaming in Soledad, who they were okay with. But it was sort of it did remind me to some degree, though, about these pockets of America you don't get into, and how different maybe we're not as different. People were very nice, but they scared the hell out of me.
Like I said, man, I live in West Virginia, and I'm I need to start using anti-Washington rhetoric, because I can now say, like, out here, John, out here in real America, I see struggles.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hardworking people out here, and I see their struggles, and I just don't know that Washington D.C. gets it.
No, it's Now what we got? I mean, we got a little more time here. What actually, folks, again, put your questions in. Otherwise, I'm going to hit another couple things with Matt, and then we're going to go. Well, let me ask about the dump Trump thing. One of your articles said that it's time for the Republicans to dump Trump. I mean, sure, yeah, but talk to me.
I've been saying that for 7 years now, so it's a standard by now. So it's not going to happen. I think the big opportunity, the last big opportunity, was the second impeachment vote, when if they could have mustered another 7 votes, they could have banned him from federal office, and even Mitch McConnell couldn't be troubled to vote.
And
for
McConnell
that. So
McConnell,
I think that was
too. I mean, McConnell with his, well, it doesn't matter. He's not, he's out of office now. It won't matter. And we're all going, he's going to run again in 4 years. So it does matter. He would have been banned from office if the Senate convicted him.
Yep.
And look what it got us.
They keep thinking that, like, Trump's going to drop dead of a heart attack tomorrow, and the truth is Donald Trump will probably outlive everybody.
Yeah.
Just the same reason that a cockroach could survive a nuclear bomb. I mean,
it's karma.
I think they keep thinking that something.
Ever. Sorry, but I always tell people, think of your worst boss ever. I had more than one boss that I wish they had dropped dead. I'm not even going to name, though. Everybody knows on this show who I'm thinking of, because whenever they ask me the wrong question about it's not the Senate, the wrong boss. And I'm like, literally Daley prayed for a heart attack. So we all know what that's like. And that boss is the one who never dies. And I feel like Donald Trump's that same way. He's going to be
only the good die young. And
he's going to be the queen mother. He's going to be a dictator at 103. Go on. Yeah.
Well, now I'm just going to say, it seems like they keep thinking that they're being, and Mitch McConnell is a pretty shrewd, smart operator. I mean, he managed to make it to the top without having any charisma. And so I do respect him to a certain degree as a strategist, but in this instance, I think they're too cute by half. They keep thinking if they show patience that they can outlast them, and that, something's going to happen. There'll be an intervening event. No, you had to make it happen. You've had a few opportunities to take him out, and every time he survived. And then it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. He can't be taken out because he can't be
strong
taken
man.
out.
He survived COVID.
Everyone's afraid of him because we thought we could have gotten him. He managed to say, grab women by the blankety blank, and he still won the election. Yeah. And so therefore, and if you were one of the idiots who criticized him in the Republican Party after the Access Hollywood thing, and then he survived, I'll never make that mistake again. I think they were so chastened and scared by that they overlearned the lesson that Trump is, unbeatable.
Yeah. Now Kevin's asking,
except all he does is lose. By the way, all he does is lose.
Yeah, true. Now Kevin says, do you think there's any chance?
Even in 2016, he still lost the popular vote.
Oh, well, that's a whole other thing too. The Democrats. Yeah. What do you think Republicans would have done had they lost the popular vote? Had they won the popular vote twice in 20 years and lost the presidency, but they actually won the popular vote for the presidency? Like this would have been a nationwide movement to somehow get that fixed, or at least, I don't know, browbeat Democrats into your presidencies are invalid, don't have a mandate. Democrats don't.
I mean,
talk about it.
Apparently in 2000, Al Gore had a plan to argue, like it was like opposite. Like Bush had a plan that he was going to win the popular vote but lose the Electoral College and argue that that's illegitimate. And Al Gore had a plan that he was going to win the Electoral College but lose the, so they both had, and you probably don't even remember this, but Donald Trump was against the Electoral College and argued that it was bogus. He
that,
thought
yeah.
he was going to get screwed by it. So everybody's hypocrites on this, but I do think Republicans, I would just say that any party, look, I'm fine with the Electoral College. I have been historically, because it happens like every 100 years there would be an instance of it.
Well,
but once it happens,
now.
every other election,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like Republicans haven't won. I guess Republicans won the popular vote one time since 1988. Is that right?
I don't know.
I think that's right. One time. I think 2004. Barely. One time. I think that's right. So, at some point it is ridiculous at some point.
Well, especially for the president, not for the presidency. I mean, it's a very, honestly, although maybe that gets into the whole thing of, well, it does get into the whole thing of, you remember when the Trumpers were playing games with Trump won, look at the numbers of counties he won. And you were like, counties aren't people. But there is this crazy concept of land, and the Electoral College kind of plays to the land thing. And I'm always like, well, that wouldn't be fair to the small states. Well, nobody lives there. It's not supposed to be fair to the land. It's supposed to be fair to the people. If you pick a state that doesn't have many people, then you have less influence. Or maybe you don't have less influence if you're all spread out.
I'm probably a little more sympathetic to it than you are. I mean, obviously, if you go back to the history when this was part of the compromise of trying to get colonies and states to band together and join the union, so less populated. So I get it, but here's the thing. I think it's okay if it happens every once in a while, but we now have a system where it is very normal for someone to be elected president and lose the popular vote. It's not weird or abnormal. And at some point, if you care about preserving liberal democracy, it becomes like untenable to do when people feel disenfranchised.
Well, imagine, again, we're lucky that Democrats are so bad at this, that Democrats were the ones that lost 2 elections, right? Because again, imagine what MAGA Republicans would do if they lost 2 presidential elections by winning the popular vote. It would be a disaster. It would just add to, like you said, it would add to the whole sense of,
I mean, I don't know what mainstream conservatives and Republicans, I don't know what they would have done, but MAGA Republicans, what would Trump say or do if it happened? I think we know. If Trump lost the election, if Trump won the popular vote and did not become president, he would burn it all down without, I mean, it would be, and you would have a lot of people, I think, supporting him.
Oh, are you kidding? You'd have Democrats. I could see the Democratic Party going, again, it would be Al Gore. It would be Al Gore 2000. For the good of the country, maybe we should just give Trump the presidency. That would be Democrats, But I'll tell people too, because somebody mentioned we're cutting each other off. We're cutting each other off because there's like a several second delay between Matt and me because of the internet connection. So it is like if you're our age and you ever called Europe, that's what's going on right now. It's any case, let's do one or more. Like I said, folks, if you got a question to throw it in. Otherwise, I'm going to ask Matt to maybe wrap up. I'm going to look 1 second here before I ask you to wrap up. Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you anyway, and then let's see if people throw in any last little ones. But how do we fix all of this, and can it be fixed? And what I mean by, I'm sorry, no, answer this first from Kevin. Do you think there's any chance that the investigations of Trump go anywhere?
Yeah, I think there's a chance. So when I look at people in history who have gotten lucky, they seem to have this magical ability, and they get lucky. And so, it always gets to Hitler, right? What's the rule about a discussion? But here's a guy who was strategically very lucky / brilliant for a long time, and then something changes,
right?
And he invades Russia. People at some point, the magic leaves. You're lucky until you're not, and I think it is possible that Trump, having gotten away, and again, I'm not saying Trump isn't, as Jonah Goldberg says, Trump isn't Hitler because Hitler could have overturned Obamacare. So I'm not saying he's Hitler, but what I'm saying is, I think there's something almost spiritual about people who have this charisma and they get the wind is at their back. They get lucky, or they're never held accountable, and then at some point they are. And so I'm not betting on it. I mean, Trump is Houdini. He always escapes.
Yeah.
He always escapes.
Yeah.
But sometimes people get away with it forever until they don't. So I think there's a chance.
No, true. It's, the thing, not that it matters. Well, it does matter to a degree. I was going to say, is it good or bad that Trump is held accountable? And what I mean by that is not just for karma's sake or whatever, but for, for the country. To some degree, it doesn't matter because what's going to happen is going to happen. Although I worry that the Justice Department is still, that Merrick Garland is still going to look at it and weigh, look at the outcry and the guy trying to break into the Chicago FBI and the Ohio FBI that they shot at him or whatever. Look at that just from executing a search warrant on Trump, let alone prosecuting him. Is it worth it? Or does it cause such social upheaval? I worry about the FBI actually thinking about that rather than, we're already effed as a country right now. I don't think you have a choice but to prosecute if objectively that is what you would do for anybody else. But
yeah, I agree. And I mean, this is serious and you have to factor in a lot of variables and all that. But as part of being a conservative is being concerned about incentives, believing in incentives. And, I think the incentives now are perverse. And it's to use a term of art, a moral hazard. If Trump gets away with this, and if all of his minions and henchmen get away like scot-free, or without paying a major penalty, what's stopping the next guy from trying this? So I think we need to lay down a marker and make an example, because it's not about revenge. It's about setting the tone for the future. Right.
It's the exact same argument used, I would say, for the January 6th insurrectionists. It is not just the right thing to do, but we've got to make clear to everybody that I would also say the folks surrounding them who may or may not be in trouble now. Let's see. I don't mean the Oath Keepers. I mean beyond, right? Roger Stone, who knows if these guys are going to be in trouble or not. But if they had an illegal hand in this, the lesson needs to be sent out that you can't get away with this shit. But Trump, the opposite lesson. Imagine Trump in a second term after everything he got away with in his first term and everything he got away with after the election. Trump's going to be even more emboldened, but that's also why you have to hold people responsible. So what do we do? How do we?
David
my last question. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I think David Frum put it best when he said that it's like the Velociraptors have learned how to turn the doorknob. If Trump gets another term, if he gets another term, he's going to be a lot smarter than the first time.
Oh God, we've got David coming on next Tuesday. Actually, just to remind folks, David is on next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, our normal time. So that's good. Yeah, I love David. That's very fun. The philosopher learned that's what Trump will be like in his second term.
Consistently a great guest. I've never seen him. I've never talked to him and not had him. Yeah. I've never talked to David Frum and not had him at least drop one or two like mic drop moments. So. Yeah.
Well, David is a friend, and I will say talking to David in person too is kind of the same way. You kind of just want to sit there and be like, just talk to me for an hour. I learned so much talking to David. I really do though. I mean, he's a great guy too. And, obviously David is another one where, he's got a past, but, so I guess last question for you. How do we fix this? I mean, literally And when I say this, I don't mean the election stuff even. You were talking about the divide in the country going beyond Trump. How do we fix that unless the actual leaders of both parties are willing to say, cut the bullshit, cut the crazy stuff?
I don't think there's any quick fix. We have to realize, like, we did not get into this problem overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight. I mean, Donald Trump came down the escalator in 2015, and even before he came down, Ted Cruz, need I say more? Our politics has been dysfunctional for a long time. And then there's the technological problem, right? Somebody mentioned in the comments about how Donald Trump won because he was a reality TV star. I think that's part of the lowering of the barriers we talked about with Twitter, is that more people on becoming reality celebrities and influencers. And I mean, Donald Trump obviously has been famous for decades, even in the old tabloid days. But I think that there's a lot of problems. We're not going to fix it overnight. If I'm trying to imagine a way forward, I think that there are a few things. One, I think that the Republican Party will not go back. They're not going to go back to Ronald Reagan or Mitt Romney or John McCain or Liz Cheney. Certainly not right away. I think what we need to do is phase out Donald Trump. And that's why, even though I have very serious concerns about Ron DeSantis, which we could talk about another time. I think, and even though I have concerns about DeSantis, I think he does present perhaps the only viable opportunity for the Republican Party to move on from Trump. And so, I think that it's possible. They're never going to repudiate Trump or Trumpism. That's not going to happen. They will not disavow him. I think they could transcend him and move on. And then the question is the cure worse than the cause, than the actual problem? We will find out. But we know what Trump is capable of and what he would be capable of in a second term. So I think that moving on is good. The other thing I think that has to happen, frankly, is that we have to part of what happens is every technological revolution brings crazy times and crazy politics, whether it's the printing press or radio or TV. So part of this problem, part of what we're experiencing is a technological upheaval. We are not equipped. Our brains are not evolved or adapted enough to manage the influx of material we're getting. God knows our parents and grandparents on Facebook watching deep fake videos do not have the ability to discern. And so the question is, will we be able to catch up and learn how to manage it, or will technology outpace our ability to filter out some of this stuff? And then the last thing I would say is very simple, but it's just learning civics. I mean, we need to make sure we are teaching Americans and children about about democracy and about America. And I don't think we are. That's a conservative critique, I think. But I don't think people have a deep enough knowledge or reverence for this country.
I don't think so. Now, it's, oh God, can you imagine? I can't even imagine the debate we would have over a civics class. Half the people would, not half the people, but half the activists would obviously, well, they wouldn't want the class at all, or they'd want it to be, I don't know what, you know what I mean? On the Republican side, I don't even know what those people would want, but it would be a disaster, any civics class. And on the left, the activists would want to take Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln out of it, and Washington, because they're bad men who own slaves. And it's like, yes, they were. It doesn't mean they didn't do some good things too.
And it could be, and then the fear is that it's just another indoctrination.
Well, but I mean, on both sides, the activists would go nuts in a class. Like, now, mind you, well, on the left, I think we could rein them in. I think we'd rein in the crazies, because people like me and everybody else would go, because it's true. Like, New York City, forget it. New York and San Francisco are gone as far as Lincoln and Jefferson and all the rest of them. But for the rest of us, we sit here and go, really? Like, I guess now they're going after what's his face? Ben Franklin's an evil one now too. And I'm like, let's grow up. You know, again, teach history correctly, but give me an effing break. Let me say this, by the way. This is one of those you and I would agree on. I always warn people who want to play the cute history game of, all right, I am not a fan of the Confederate monuments. I will say, though, every time we try to say, well, we can't have statues of Jefferson and Lincoln and blah, 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 because they own slaves, or not Lincoln, but the other guys, you open yourself up to some real problems, because I got news for you. Most politicians in this country, or most activists, or most people you want in a statue, they weren't great on women and they weren't great on gays. And if we're going to have a policy that they weren't great on race, yeah.
I'll give you an example. You were just out in Milwaukee, right?
Yep.
There's a Fonzie statue, Arthur Fonzarelli.
I didn't see it, but yes.
Statue of him. No, I happen to really like Fonzie as a child of the Gen Xer. I like Fonzie, but but he was a womanizer. I mean, he would snap his fingers and like
it was sexist. No, it was sexist. It was sexist.
He called them chicks.
Yeah,
3 or 4 chicks, maybe 5.
Yeah,
and so I'm not sure we should have that statue either.
Well, no, it was sexist. No, but I mean, but in all seriousness, though, I really mean this, though. I mean, if people are going to play this game based on race, then let's play this game. And I say game because it is to a degree. Let's play it on sexual with the gays and with the women. Because if you were sexist or you were homophobic, I don't want your freaking statue out there either. And most people are not going to be, Gandhi apparently isn't a good guy now. I mean, most historical figures are not going to pass the smell test if you literally say, were they good human beings? Really? In their private life, were they good human beings? I mean, it's just, anyway, that's a whole other discussion that makes me, that people here agree with me, but people on Twitter hate me when I say shit like this. Fonzie was awesome. You're getting pushback.
And by the way, I don't limit it to Fonzie. I think Henry Winkler, as far as I know, is a mensch.
He's good. Henry Winkler's a good guy. Yeah, he seems like a very
Henry Winkler too.
Yeah,
but he seems like a great guy. But no, I think all of us. It's not just politicians or famous people, but all of us. You could find something in every single human being's life, and especially if they lived 100 years ago or something.
Yeah.
But even modern people, that would be a disqualifier of anybody. If you dig deep enough, the worst day, not statue worthy.
You know what we used to, when we were kids in the 1960s, I remember this because I'm a little older than you, I think, Matt, barely, probably, but 1960s, we would dress for Halloween as hobos. Now, I had to actually Google hobos recently because I was like, I kind of forgot I remembered what they looked like. The stick
you need like the stick.
The stick and we would dress as hobos, and I don't recall, though, what color the face was. That's an interesting question that I honestly don't recall. But there's just as good a chance that hobo was black than white. I mean, just dressing as a hobo is like a poor guy living by the railroad. It's the shit that. But when I was in law school, our law professor said to us, and I don't remember what case we were studying, but he said something fascinating. He said, there is and he was talking about public figures and this kind of thing. And he said, there is a private side and a public side. And the public side can be very good and virtuous. The private life can be something else entirely. And I forgot why he got into it, but it was just to at least start us young kids in our 20s thinking in our minds that you will find this dichotomy in life sometimes. And it's not just everybody whose private life you might disagree with is evil and bad. It's things are much more complicated, or I don't want to say gray, but they're much more black and white than you'd think they are. No, I get this kind of stuff drives me nuts just because people aren't nuanced about it. With the internet, forget it.
But I will say, and I agree with everything you said. I think it's nuanced and complicated. But one thing I will defend: Donald Trump is a bad person. He is a bad human being, objectively speaking. Yeah. And so there are people, even though it's sometimes not clear. That's how bad he is.
Public and private, though. Yeah, but he's got public and private down. That's the thing. He doesn't. It's not like, well, I'm telling you, the people I talk to who I respect. Now, a lot of the people I respect are obviously will not vote for Trump, but people I still respect out here in the Midwest who are like, they think Donald Trump, he's pretty good. And I'm like, are you not embarrassed by the stuff he did? Do you not? Okay. Tell me that you like some of his policies, but as a human being, you find him abhorrent and repellent. At least tell me that. But they generally won't. They won't say he's a disgusting human being. I would never want my daughter dating. They won't say that about him. It's anyway, let's call it quits. I don't want to drag this on too long for folks, but this was great. Matt, where do people find you if they want to, follow you on social or wherever?
The local bar after this show,
in
but
West
on
Virginia.
social at Matt K. Lewis on Twitter is the best place to find me. And I would also plug my podcast, Matt Lewis and the News, which I'm a fan of. I'm biased, of course.
Where do they find that, or just Google Matt Lewis and the News?
Yeah, so you can get it on YouTube. It's youtube.com/Matt Lewis, or on iTunes, Matt Lewis and the News. And we do a lot of political stuff, but I also do a lot of non-political stuff. So, for example, I just interviewed yesterday Ron Sheldon, who is the writer and director of the movie Bull Durham, which is one of my favorite movies from the 80s. Right. And we talked about Kevin Costner and Susan Sarandon and Tim Robbins in baseball. So if you want a break from politics, check that episode out.
All right, I thought you were going to say Happy Days. He was the producer of Happy Days.
I would love it. Listen, if you're out there, Arthur Fonzarelli, Henry Winkler, and you want to come on my podcast, I would love to talk to Henry Winkler.
No, he seems like from everything I've seen, he seems, and from what I've heard, he's a very nice guy. Yeah. Which is kind of funny too, because he's such a genuinely sweet man for playing like such a sexist kind of, although positive character, so to speak, back then. It is pretty funny though, going through old TV shows, West Wing, Star Trek. I always tell people too, like one of my favorite, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, a very good series that picked up as it went along. One of the main plot lines was the Doctor was was infatuated with one of the crew, one of the new women in the crew, and he would harass her through, nonstop sexual harassment until in the end, I forgot in the end. No, he didn't get her in the end, but he kind of, he didn't get her in the end, but then she's replaced. It's complicated. She's replaced with somebody who takes over part of her body. It's kind of complicated. And then he hits on her and gets her. Looking at it now, I'm like, could you be more? He was sexually harassing this woman. But that shit was okay in the 90s even. It wasn't okay, but it's funny to look back and go, oh my God, these shows.
It's amazing. Go back and watch Ghostbusters with Bill Murray and what was it, Sigourney Weaver or something. And this was sold to us by liberal Hollywood as appropriate behavior and funny. And if you want to, you should emulate this, go back and watch MASH with Alan Alda. Alan Alda, considered a kind of a liberal hero. The show MASH in the 70s, his behavior was abhorrent. It's really amazing. And it was a comedy, ostensibly.
Yeah. But no, how things develop, but it also gets into that discussion of looking at the past and having to also understand it in context, because I wouldn't say the behavior was acceptable, but I would say that, for example, the behavior on those shows, it's not like there was a massive women's movement at the time saying, take those shows off TV. The women were laughing at it too. It was a different time. Although now we'd say it clearly was awful, but it's complicated. Anyway, that's for a whole other discussion on culture that'll get us both banned on TV. All right, Matt, thanks for joining. And this was great. So thank you so much. And like I said, it'll be on TikTok. It'll be on YouTube. Once I disconnect, it'll be archived there. All right. Thanks again, man. Thanks you everybody else for joining us too.
Thanks, John.